It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden light over the peaceful city street. A soft breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the scent of the distant ocean. Michael, a man who had learned to navigate the world without sight, walked calmly down the sidewalk, guided by the steady rhythm of Zeus's paws against the pavement. Zeus, a German shepherd, wasn't just any guide dog. He had served in countless high-stakes situations, a trained K9 unit, and his instincts were sharper than most could ever understand. But that afternoon, something was off. Michael's hand gripped the leash, his connection with the dog unbroken. But Zeus seemed tense, his body rigid, ears pricked at every little sound. Michael knew something was wrong, though he couldn't put his finger on it. He had learned to trust Zeus's instincts. As the two continued their walk, a loud engine roared in the distance, slowly growing louder. It wasn't unusual to hear a motorcycle on the street, but this one felt different. And then, as the motorcyclist sped past them, the rider's careless act would change everything. A harsh kick aimed at Zeus's side, delivered with the thoughtless arrogance of someone who couldn't comprehend the gravity of what they had just done. What the rider didn't know, what no one could have anticipated, was that Zeus wasn't just any dog. The motorcyclist had unknowingly triggered a chain of events that would bring out the very thing Zeus had once been trained for: protection, loyalty, and a defense that would shock them all. And from that moment, neither Michael nor Zeus could go back to the life they knew before. The sun had begun its descent, casting long, jagged shadows that stretched across the sidewalk. The world seemed calm, too calm. The soft, rhythmic tapping of Zeus's paws against the pavement echoed in the stillness. But Michael couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. Something in the air had changed. He could feel it, an electricity in the atmosphere that hummed beneath the peaceful facade. He wasn't sure what it was, but his senses were heightened. Zeus, his ever-loyal guide dog, moved with unusual caution, his sharp, alert eyes scanning every corner of the street, his ears flicking toward every passing sound. As they continued walking, Michael's thoughts swirled. He tried to focus on the familiar sound of the city, the distant murmur of traffic, the occasional honk of a car, the soft rustling of leaves. But none of it seemed right. The street felt too quiet. The usual hum of life, of people going about their business, had fallen silent. He felt the weight of the quiet press in on him, thick with anticipation. His mind wandered back to the days when Zeus had served as a K9 unit, a dog trained to sense danger before it could even be seen. But today, in this quiet moment, he couldn't see the danger, and that frightened him. Zeus stopped abruptly, his body taut with unease. Michael's hand tightened around the leash, his heartbeat quickening. He couldn't hear what the dog was sensing, but he could feel it. And that feeling, like the calm before a storm, was enough to send a chill running down his spine. Michael had always lived in the quiet rhythm of routine. A man of habit, he thrived in simplicity, and the world around him was his anchor. His small apartment, the walk to the corner cafe each morning, the feel of Zeus's leash in his hand. These were the things that grounded him. In many ways, his life was like the peaceful street they walked down now. Calm on the surface, but with something unsettling beneath. The quiet hum of his day-to-day life had been punctuated by a past that he didn't often talk about. Before Zeus, Michael had been a man driven by the need to protect, but not in the traditional sense. He had once been a police officer, just another person in the system, blending in with the crowd. That was before he'd lost his partner in the line of duty, a wound that had left him scarred, physically and emotionally. It wasn't until he'd adopted Zeus, a former K9 unit, that the weight of his loss began to feel less suffocating. Zeus had been his lifeline, a reminder that no matter how dark things got, there was still something worth fighting for. Zeus was no ordinary dog. The way his fur gleamed in the sunlight, his movements graceful but purposeful, spoke of the training and dedication he'd once had as part of an elite K9 unit. He wasn't just a companion. He was a protector, a silent guardian who understood things that Michael could not always see. When Michael had first met him, he'd been drawn to Zeus's piercing eyes that seemed to see the world differently, that seemed to understand the unspoken fears Michael carried within him. Zeus had a history of service, of risking his life to save others, and Michael couldn't help but admire the strength that lived in the dog's every move. But despite the bond they shared, Michael sometimes wondered if Zeus's instincts were still sharp, if the warrior within him still recognized the call of danger. Today, as the dog stiffened at his side, Michael realized that those instincts had never left. They were simply waiting, like dormant embers, for the right moment to flare up. In contrast to Zeus's calm confidence, Michael was still a man shaped by loss. His emotions often felt like a storm behind a wall, never fully released but always threatening to burst through. When he looked at Zeus, he saw not just a dog but a reflection of the strength he had lost and was slowly reclaiming. Yet, a part of him wondered if he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Was he strong enough to protect what mattered most? Was he ready for what Zeus seemed to sense? A danger that lurked just beyond the horizon? They were a team, man and dog, both scarred by the past, both trying to find their place in the present. But as they walked through the eerily quiet street, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that their bond was about to be tested in ways neither of them could predict. And, for the first time in a long while, Michael wasn't sure if he was ready. The soft rhythm of Michael's footsteps echoed against the cobblestone street, a sound he had come to find comforting. Zeus walked dutifully at his side, his leash slack, his ears alert. It was their usual afternoon stroll, but today, something felt off. The usual hum of distant city life was absent. No laughter from children playing nearby, no engines rumbling in the distance, just silence. Michael felt Zeus tug gently on the leash, his head turning toward a narrow alley to their right. It was a small movement, barely noticeable to anyone but Michael, who had learned to read his companion's every move. Zeus wasn't just curious, he was on edge. "Easy, boy," Michael murmured, his voice low and steady, but the tension in his chest betrayed him. Zeus didn't respond to his words, his body rigid as his gaze stayed fixed on the alley. Michael stopped walking, tilting his head slightly, listening. First, there was nothing, but then, faintly, came the sound of muffled laughter. A cruel, mocking tone that sent a shiver down Michael's spine. He turned toward the alley, instinctively placing a hand on Zeus's back, feeling the dog's muscles tighten beneath his palm. Emerging from the shadows was a figure, young, lanky, and dressed in a leather jacket that gleamed under the weak afternoon light. The man sauntered forward, his movements exaggerated, as if he were performing for an invisible audience. In his hand, he spun a motorcycle helmet casually, the plastic glinting ominously. "Hey there, old-timer," the man called out, his voice dripping with derision. "Nice dog you got there. What's his name?" Michael's grip tightened on the leash. "Zeus," he replied, keeping his tone neutral. The man smirked, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. "Zeus, huh? Sounds like a tough name. But he doesn't look so tough to me." Zeus let out a low growl, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. The man's smirk faltered for a brief moment before he shrugged it off. "Relax, buddy," he said, addressing the dog. "I'm just having some fun." Without warning, the man took a quick step forward and swung his leg toward Zeus. It wasn't a hard kick, more of a taunting nudge meant to provoke, but it was enough to make Michael's blood boil. "Stop!" Michael barked, his voice sharp. He pulled Zeus back instinctively, his heart pounding as the man chuckled, clearly enjoying the reaction. "Relax, old man. It's just a joke," the man sneered, but there was nothing playful in his tone. What the man didn't realize, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that Zeus was no ordinary dog. The faint scar along his flank, the way his body moved with precision and control, the intensity in his eyes, they all spoke of a history that was far from ordinary. Zeus had been trained to protect, to act swiftly and decisively in the face of danger. And right now, he was on high alert. "Back off," Michael warned, his voice low and steady. But the man didn't listen. Instead, he leaned forward, his grin widening as he reached out as if to grab Zeus's collar. It happened in a flash. Zeus lunged, his teeth snapping inches from the man's hand. The man stumbled backward, his cocky demeanor replaced by a flicker of fear. "Whoa, crazy mutt," he yelled, clutching his hand to his chest. Michael pulled Zeus back, his own adrenaline surging. "You asked for it," he said, his voice firm. "Now leave us alone." The man glared at him, his bravado quickly returning as he noticed no one else was around to witness the confrontation. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he spat, stepping closer again. Michael's grip tightened on Zeus's leash, but his free hand reached instinctively for the phone in his pocket. "Don't make this worse for yourself," he said evenly. The man hesitated, his eyes darting between Michael, Zeus, and the street behind them. The silence was thick with tension, every second feeling like an eternity. But just as quickly as the confrontation had started, it ended. The man cursed under his breath, slamming his helmet against his thigh before turning on his heel. He stalked away, his footsteps echoing down the alley. Michael let out a shaky breath, his heart still racing. He knelt beside Zeus, his hand resting on the dog's head. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. Zeus's tail wagged once, a brief flicker of relief before his ears perked up again. He wasn't ready to relax, and neither was Michael. As they continued their walk, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter wasn't over. The man's parting glare, the way he had muttered under his breath, it felt like a warning. And as they turned the corner, stepping back onto the main street, Michael noticed something that made his stomach drop. Parked at the curb was a sleek black motorcycle, its engine still warm. The man was watching them, waiting. The quiet afternoon had taken a sinister turn, and Michael knew that whatever was coming next, he and Zeus would have to face it together. Michael's pulse quickened as he realized the man hadn't truly left. The motorcycle parked nearby and the faint whiff of cigarette smoke drifting toward him from the shadows confirmed it. He was being watched. Zeus seemed to sense it too. The dog's ears swiveled, his body tense and alert as they passed the corner. "Stay calm, Zeus," Michael muttered under his breath, though he wasn't sure if the reassurance was more for the dog or himself. He turned down a quieter street, hoping to lose the man's attention, but the distinct rumble of a motorcycle engine roaring to life behind him shattered that hope. The sound reverberated through the empty street, a predator announcing its presence. Michael's grip tightened on the leash. His mind raced with questions. Why was this man so fixated on them? Was he just looking for trouble, or was there something more sinister at play? The motorcycle followed at a slow, deliberate pace, the engine growling like a beast stalking its prey. Every so often, it would rev loudly, causing Zeus to jerk his head toward the noise. "Let's go, boy," Michael said, quickening his pace. Zeus matched his stride, the tension in his body palpable. The pair rounded another corner, moving toward a small park Michael knew well. The open space would give them a better chance to see what was coming and avoid being cornered. But as they entered the park, the eerie stillness made Michael's stomach churn. The usual chatter of birds and rustling leaves was absent, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on them. Zeus stopped abruptly, his ears standing straight up. A low growl rumbled from his throat as his gaze locked on a cluster of trees ahead. "What is it, boy?" Michael whispered, scanning the area. His heart skipped a beat when he noticed the faint glint of something metallic in the shadows. Was it a knife? A pipe? The man had followed them into the park. The sound of boots crunching on gravel broke the silence. Michael turned just in time to see the man emerge from the trees, his leather jacket gleaming under the dim light of a nearby lamppost. "You've got guts, old man," the man sneered, his voice dripping with menace. He carried a length of chain in one hand, swinging it lazily as if it were a toy. "But guts won't get you very far." Michael's mind raced. He couldn't outrun the man, not with his eyesight, and calling for help seemed futile in the desolate park. His only option was to stand his ground. "I don't want any trouble," Michael said, his voice steady despite the fear knotting his stomach. "Trouble?" The man laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think this is about trouble? You embarrassed me back there, and now I'm going to teach you a lesson." Zeus growled louder, his body poised to attack. The man took a step closer, raising the chain. "That mutt won't save you," he spat. But before the man could make another move, Zeus barked sharply, the sound echoing through the park like a gunshot. The force of it seemed to startle the man, who froze for a split second. In that moment, Michael's mind flashed back to the first time he'd met Zeus. He remembered the trainer's stern words. "Zeus is trained to protect you at all costs. Trust him." "I'm warning you," Michael said, his voice firmer now. "Leave us alone." The man smirked, taking another step forward. But as he did, Zeus lunged, his powerful body propelling forward with a ferocity that caught the man off guard. The chain clattered to the ground as the man stumbled backward, barely managing to evade Zeus's snapping jaws. "Crazy dog!" the man yelled, scrambling to his feet. Michael held tight to the leash, his voice commanding. "Zeus, stay." The dog obeyed, though his growl remained low and menacing. The man backed away, his cocky demeanor replaced by fear. But as he retreated, he muttered something that sent a chill down Michael's spine. "This isn't over," he said, his voice barely audible. Michael watched as the man disappeared into the darkness, his motorcycle engine roaring to life moments later. But even as the sound faded into the distance, the tension in Michael's chest didn't ease. Zeus barked softly, as if to reassure him, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the man's parting words were a promise, a threat of something yet to come. They stayed in the park for a moment longer, Michael's hand resting on Zeus's head. The dog's steady presence was a comfort, but it didn't erase the lingering unease. As they made their way home, Michael couldn't help but glance over his shoulder, half expecting the motorcycle to reappear. The quiet night seemed to hold its breath, and every shadow felt like it hid a pair of watching eyes. Whatever was coming, Michael knew one thing for certain. He and Zeus would have to be ready. The quiet didn't last long. Just as Michael reached his apartment building, the low growl of a motorcycle echoed down the street again. His stomach clenched. It was him. The man hadn't given up after all. Michael's keys fumbled in his hand as he unlocked the door. Zeus was already alert, his ears pinned back, his body tense. Once inside, Michael bolted the door and leaned against it, his breath coming in quick gasps. But the reprieve was short-lived. A loud bang rattled the front door, followed by the man's voice, muffled but furious. "You think you can run from me? Open the door." Michael's mind raced. He had to think fast. Calling the police would take time, and he wasn't sure they'd arrive before the man broke in. Zeus stood by his side, growling low and deep. The dog's readiness reminded Michael that he wasn't alone. Another crash against the door made Michael flinch. The wood splintered slightly, but it held. "Zeus, stay close," he whispered. The next sound sent a wave of dread through Michael, glass shattering. The man had found another way in. Michael turned toward the living room, where the sound had come from. Zeus barked sharply, his body already moving toward the broken window. Michael followed, his hands trembling as he grabbed a flashlight from the counter. The man climbed through the shattered frame, his silhouette illuminated by the streetlight outside. He held the same chain, his expression twisted with rage. "You just couldn't let it go, could you?" the man sneered, advancing toward Michael. Michael backed away, his heart pounding. "You need to leave. Now. Or what?" the man taunted, swinging the chain menacingly. "You gonna call the cops?" "Too late for that." Zeus barked again, louder this time, positioning himself between Michael and the intruder. The man laughed, clearly underestimating the dog's capabilities. "You think that much scares me?" he said, stepping closer. Before he could take another step, Michael gave a sharp command. "Zeus, attack!" The dog launched forward with incredible speed and precision, his powerful body colliding with the man. The chain fell from his hand as he struggled to fend off the trained canine. Zeus's growls filled the room, a terrifying sound that seemed to reverberate off the walls. The man screamed, trying to push the dog away, but Zeus was relentless, pinning him to the floor. Michael stepped closer, his flashlight beam illuminating the man's panicked face. "Call him off," the man pleaded, his earlier bravado completely gone. Michael's voice was steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. You should have thought about that before you broke into my home. Zeus kept the man immobilized. His teeth bared mere inches from his throat. Michael reached for his phone and dialed 911. His hands finally steadying as he explained the situation. The operator assured him that help was on the way. Meanwhile, the man beneath Zeus squirmed, his confidence shattered. "I didn't mean it," he stammered. "I just wanted to scare you." Michael shook his head. "Scaring someone isn't a joke. You crossed a line when you hurt Zeus, and you crossed it again when you came here." Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Zeus stayed alert, keeping the man subdued until 2 police officers entered the apartment, their guns drawn. "Let them handle it, Zeus," Michael said, his voice calm but firm. The dog obeyed, retreating to Michael's side, though he kept a watchful eye on the man. The officers quickly apprehended the intruder, cuffing him and leading him out of the apartment. One of them turned to Michael. "Looks like your dog saved the day," she said with a smile. Michael nodded, resting a hand on Zeus's head. "He's more than a dog. He's my partner." After the officers left, the apartment felt eerily quiet. Michael looked around at the broken window, the scattered glass, and the deep scratches on the floor. It would take time to repair the physical damage, but the emotional scars would take even longer to heal. Michael crouched down beside Zeus, who was panting but otherwise unharmed. "You're amazing, you know that?" he said, his voice soft. Zeus licked his hand in response, his eyes filled with loyalty and affection. As the adrenaline subsided, Michael allowed himself a moment of reflection. The man's actions had been reckless, dangerous, and cruel, but they had also reminded Michael of the strength he possessed. Not just in Zeus, but in himself. Together, they had faced the danger head-on and come out stronger for it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Michael knew he could trust Zeus to be by his side, ready to protect and defend. The night had been harrowing, but as Michael sat on the floor with Zeus resting his head on his lap, a sense of peace began to settle over him. They had survived, and together, they would continue to face whatever life threw their way. As the sun rose the next morning, casting warm light through the shattered window, Michael sat on the couch with Zeus at his feet. The chaos of the previous night felt distant now, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude and introspection. Looking at Zeus, Michael couldn't help but marvel at the loyalty and courage the dog had shown. Zeus wasn't just a companion. He was a protector, a symbol of strength in the face of adversity. Last night's ordeal had forced Michael to confront fears he didn't realize he was still holding on to. For so long, he had tried to navigate life independently, believing that his blindness made him vulnerable in a world that often felt unforgiving. But Zeus had shown him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was a reminder that everyone, no matter their circumstances, has the strength to overcome challenges when they lean on the right support. The incident also underscored a painful but important truth. Some people act out of ignorance or malice without understanding the consequences of their actions. The motorcyclist had seen Zeus as just another dog, an easy target for a cruel joke. What he didn't see was the bond between a man and his guide dog, a bond built on trust, training, and unyielding loyalty. Michael hoped the man would reflect on his actions during his time in custody. Perhaps he'd realize that harm, even when intended as a joke, ripples outward in ways he couldn't imagine. For Michael, the night's events were a reminder of resilience. Life could be unpredictable and harsh, but with the right mindset and allies, he could face anything. As he stroked Zeus's fur, Michael spoke softly, not just to his dog but to himself. "We're stronger than they'll ever know." To the audience, the story serves as a testament. Even in moments of darkness, there's light to be found in loyalty, courage, and the bonds that hold us together. It's a reminder to choose kindness, for we never truly know the battles others are fighting, or the strength they carry within. If the story gave you chills or made you think twice about the connections we share with those who protect us, don't let it end here. Hit that like button to show your support for stories that remind us of the courage, loyalty, and resilience that can shine through even the darkest moments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in Michael's shoes? Share your ideas or reflections in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories like this one. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode of suspense, mystery, and inspiration. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and remember, every story has a lesson waiting to be uncovered. See you in the next one.